My mom volunteered for the Girl Scouts, but we changed troops a lot, always starting over. Because my exposure to anyone other than my mother was so limited, I had no idea that the way I lived was different or unusual. How could I? I attended school for 1 year, kindergarten. After that, Mama pulled me out to homeschool me. Except that was a lie. She didn't register me as a homeschooler. It's not like the things that I'm currently doing, it's not circulating around the crime.
Yes,
like
not
the
at all.
TV show is about my life currently. My social media, there's not one thing posted about the crime on my social media. How am I profiting off of the crime? Because that's what I'm known for. I'm trying to change that.
From national headlines, documentaries, and true crime specials, even as she capitalizes on it through social media, an upcoming book, and a rumored reality TV show, her story has drawn sympathy. But today, we're here to expose the contradictions and hypocrisy behind her claims. Let's be clear, Gypsy's life may have been filled with trauma, but the choices she's making now show she's benefiting from the events that led to her mother's death. Despite her denials, we're going to uncover how Gypsy's actions expose her calculated attempts to profit from her tragic past, all while she claims she's not. Gypsy recently joined a live panel hosted by Bree, where she addressed accusations that she's profiting from her mother's murder. Gypsy has been on parole since her release from prison, and in the live session, she emphasized that she is required to maintain a job as part of her parole. But here's where things get interesting. Her job, as Gypsy describes it, includes her social media presence, her upcoming book, and even a reality TV show.
With my prison job, when I was in prison and I was working as a photographer in the visiting room, I had to quit that position and move to a position doing warehouse work inside prison because the families would recognize me and want to talk to me, and they were all nice, but part of the rules was you can't socialize with other inmates' visitors.
Right.
And so I couldn't stand there, take their picture, and then have a whole conversation with them. It was too distracting. So I had to quit that. So now things are considerably more heightened. So I just don't see that happening for right now. And everybody's like, she doesn't have a job. What is going on? Okay, by parole, I have to have a job. And my parole officer does count my book, the documentary, the TV show, everything that even my social media, being an influencer, that counts as a job. So as long as I still have that, that is my income, that is my job.
At first, it seems harmless. Gypsy is using social media to build a career, just like many others do. But when we dig deeper, the problem becomes clear. She's built her entire online presence on the back of the tragedy surrounding her mother's murder. Gypsy might not explicitly say, "I am profiting from this," but her actions speak volumes. Every time she posts about her new book or hints at her reality show, she's profiting from the very tragedy she claims to distance herself from. Gypsy's attempt to paint herself as someone who is simply trying to make a living crumbles when we look at the facts during the live panel. She talked about how her social media presence is part of her parole job requirement. She has positioned herself as an influencer, engaging with thousands of followers across platforms like TikTok and Instagram.
It's not the things that I'm currently doing, it's not circulating around the crime.
Yes, not
the
at all.
TV show is about my life currently. My social media, there's not one thing posted about the crime on my social media. How am I profiting off of the crime? Because that's what I'm known for. I'm trying to change that. If people would just give me the chance to prove that, hey, I can go from being known, infamous, to being known for doing something better with her life. And that's my point on social media.
Yes, it's not going to happen overnight.
It's not going to happen overnight. And I am still finding, what is my niche? What is my purpose? When I first came out, I wanted to advocate. But, people like Mina and Morbid and all of these content creators slam me down. And I'm human. That's going to get to me.
But Gypsy doesn't stop there. She's also about to release a memo, My Time to Stand, which will reportedly dive into her life after prison and how she's moved forward. Yet the book is categorized under true crime, a genre that thrives on the grim details of tragedy. If Gypsy isn't benefiting from the crime, then why is she writing a book that is so deeply tied to her past? This is where her contradictions are impossible to ignore. You can't say you're moving forward while still profiting from the very event that defined your life. And what's worse, Gypsy is presenting herself as an innocent victim of circumstance, all while cashing on the story that led to her mother's death. Let's dive deeper into her upcoming book, My Time to Stand. Gypsy has framed this memo as a story about her journey after prison and her personal growth. On the surface, it sounds like an inspiring tale of redemption. But when we look closer, it's clear that the book is yet another way for Gypsy to profit from the tragedy that made her infamous. In an exclusive interview with People, Gypsy talked about her book, saying it's her way of sharing her side of the story and how she's moved on from her past. But if you examine the details, it's evident that the book will explore her life with her mother, Didi Blanchard, and the events that led to her death. Gypsy might say that she's moved on, but the reality is this book, categorized under true crime, will draw readers who are interested in the murder of Didi Blanchard. So, is Gypsy really moving on, or is she just cleverly repackaging her tragic story to keep the public engaged and her bank account growing? The fact that she's voicing the audiobook herself further ties her personal involvement to the crime. Let's not forget the promotional video where Gypsy is seen reading from her book. In this video, Gypsy presents herself as a changed woman, but the responses from the public are less than supportive. After posting a video of herself reading an excerpt of her memoir, the reaction from the audience was brutal.
My mom volunteered for the Girl Scouts, but we changed troops a lot, always starting over. Because my exposure to anyone other than my mother was so limited, I had no idea that the way I lived was different or unusual. How could I? I attended school for 1 year, kindergarten. After that, Mama pulled me out to homeschool me. Except that was a lie. She didn't register me as a homeschooler.
Let's look at some of the comments. Wait, I thought you attended school until grade 2. You should not be reading it. You should know exactly what happened and not read it. Someone would pay to hear this woman speak. My ears bleed every time she's on my feed. These comments speak volumes about the public's perception of Gypsy. People are seeing through her attempt to rewrite her narrative. They are not buying her claims of moving on from the tragedy, and they are growing tired of her using the story of her mother's death for attention and profit. It's one thing to share your story, but it's another to continuously profit from it while denying you're doing so. The public is clearly frustrated with Gypsy, and the backlash she's receiving is a direct result of her continued manipulation of the narrative.
Gypsy Rose Blanchard is recording for her audiobook. This girl is still lying! And I blame the media for this. It's a lie, and she wasn't registered for homeschooling when there was proof that she was registered for homeschooling. So this girl is still on this internet, just telling lies. Furthermore, this is clearly a snooze fest. But could you imagine listening to Gypsy Rose's voice for a whole audiobook? I'm not buying something to listen to her voice. I mean, not that I would buy her book anyway, because we know it's a book of lies, right? All right, y'all, they're sitting there, so. But actually, it's not. And those of you guys that have something to say about what I have to say, this girl lied. She manipulated a man with autism, a low IQ, and mental health issues that was collecting a disability check at the time to unalive her mom so she could go have sausage. She was playing more than one man.
Next, let's discuss the rumored reality TV show. While details are scarce, there are whispers that Gypsy is in talks to film a second season of a show that follows her life after prison. The first season, which aired on Lifetime, focused heavily on her past, her relationship with Nicolas Gaudijon, and the events leading to her mother's murder. If there's one thing Gypsy has learned, is that her story sells. The reality TV show is just another way for her to cash in on the narrative that made her infamous. It's not about moving forward. It's about keeping people interested in her life by constantly bringing up the past. And let's be honest, would anyone even care about Gypsy Rose Blanchard if it weren't for the tragedy that unfolded? This reality TV show is yet another reminder that Gypsy isn't distancing herself from her mother's death, she's building her brand around it. Gypsy's presence on platforms like TikTok and Instagram is carefully curated portrayal of her post-prison life. She shares clips of her day-to-day routines, offers beauty tips, and occasionally hints at her upcoming projects. But underneath this facade lies the undeniable truth: her social media presence is built on the foundation of the crime that defined her life. Every time Gypsy posts a TikTok, every time she shares an Instagram story, she's engaging with followers who are there because of her past. Her followers aren't watching because they care about her makeup routine. They are watching because of the murder that made her a household name. And Gypsy knows this. She might not say it out loud, but she's well aware that her audience is captivated by her connection to her mother's death. She may try to present herself as just another influencer, but the reality is, Gypsy's influence is rooted in the crime. Without that tragedy, she wouldn't have a platform and she wouldn't be able to profit off her story. Gypsy Rose Blanchard can claim all she wants that she isn't benefiting from the tragedy of her mother's death, but her actions tell a very different story. From her social media presence to her upcoming memoir and the rumored reality TV show, Gypsy continues to profit from the very events she claims to have moved on from. Her story isn't one of redemption, it's one of manipulation. She's built a brand on the back of her tragic past, and she's using it to her advantage at every opportunity. The public sees through her contradictions, and the backlash she's receiving is proof that people are tired of her attempts to rewrite the narrative. It's time to stop viewing Gypsy Rose Blanchard as an innocent victim and start seeing her for what she is, a woman who is profiting from the darkest chapter of her life while denying it at every turn. And the more we dig, the more we uncover the hypocrisy at the heart of the story.